In Buddhism, there are 4 types of wisdom. One wisdom is finding something very interesting, wondrous. Second one is to realize something is as equal. There's a sense of oneness. There's a connection, that there's something connecting to each other. The third one, which I'll come back more later, is called the mirror mind. The original translation is big round mirror mind, pointing to your mind reflecting on the mirror so that you see what you're doing, and that is a realization of know yourself, and that helps us to come up with the wisdom. If something is wrong, you can figure out. If everything is good, you also can figure this out. We're going to talk about it, but since we talk about the 4 types, the last one is the wisdom of things to happen as they could without your trying. So it's like, I don't know what may be a good example. Without moving things, without thinking, you do the painting or you're writing or communicating, and everything moves smoothly. So back to the third one, which was the mirror mind. And I want to talk more about it, but in relation to the other concept first, which is answering your own question. In Japanese, it says self-questioning, self-answering. So you're talking to yourself as if to know what you're saying or thinking is correct. And keep asking, why is it so, or what could be different, or try to figure out the way so that you can clarify the picture or the idea more clearly. Especially when you work, there may be some risk and opportunity, and you need to look at all different directions. But the same thing in life. Is this a person you want to be with or not? What's the pros and cons? What happened before? Kind of lay out all the ideas about the person, or reflecting that it's yourself, your feeling toward that person. So you ask the question to yourself, answer to your question. Better yet, maybe also, or in conjunction to that, we may want to ask someone else their opinion about what you're thinking. And more you can have such friend here, and there, maybe different sex, age, occupation, and more friends you have, more opportunity to get their view of what you may want to do or not want to do. So it's a check and balance process, basically, to know how you see yourself positioning now and into the future. More we have those references, not just the people, but the books or even the web, some site that you remember, there may be some interesting insight or wisdom, so you can connect those, and even to triangulate. I mentioned the triangulation as one subject some time ago, but that helps you to locate where it may be. Because if you are caught up in your mind, or you only look at the situation in one direction, you may not see the shady part of it. Like I was living in Japan and moved to the US, and after a while I started to see the difference, and it was as if to see the object from one side and also the other side. So you can kind of connect to each other, and you may have a unique position that many people may not have if they didn't travel or have experience in living in different countries, which could be good, but by having such a skill, you may find yourself that you may not belong to this country in Japan or country in the US or some other places. I traveled and had houses and so forth. So you become more international perhaps. But the pro side is that you can see the picture more from different angles so that your insight, the way to assess the situation, may be deeper. So that's about asking the question and answering the question. Related to that, I want to just talk briefly about the concept of a plan, do, check, act. Whatever we do, Usually we have a plan. You execute the plan and check the result, understand whether it went right or wrong and what's the reason, and come up to the next plan. So the life's journey is the continuation of this plan, do, check, act cycle. So this questioning yourself and answering yourself is like before coming up with a plan, you kind of check different angles and synthesize to make sure that the plan is solid. So if you can do that well, you can execute. The next step is do, after plan and do, and then check the result and act upon it. Now, I want to talk about the self-observation related to the questioning to yourself and answering. One difference here is that questioning yourself and answering is more of a logical dimension. But when you talk about the self-observation, it's more like an intuitive, visual orientation on what the situation is. Often, in my work as management consultant, what you think need to be explained easily so that you can understand or other people can understand. And if you write lots of sentences, it takes more time, but if you can capture the essence with some kind of matrix or draw a picture or even little cartoon related to that, like I often do in my posting my YouTube, I put some ideas so that I have some sense of what this is about, at least for me, so that I can picture the people who may be watching can see the nuances, something behind the story. So it's kind of like a part of a check and balance process. So this self-observation is more related to the check process of plan, do, check, act that I talked about. In fact, when we talk about the plan, do, check, act, I often say don't start with a plan. Let's always start with check, because unless we have an understanding of what's going on or what has happened and understand, analyze, figure out the reason why and the lessons learned, and then you can develop a better plan. So go through this plan, do, check, act cycle like a continuous improvement cycle, or it could be applied for sailing or driving or doing whatever project you want to do. You have this PDCA cycle, and if you continue this like a heartbeat, it becomes your natural way of assessing the situation and figuring out. So it's a rhythm. Organization can develop it, but individually we can develop that. So self-question, self-answer maybe toward the end of the PDCA cycle, check and act and planning end of it. But when it comes to the self-observation, it may be more reflection, like you see yourself in the mirror. And that's the point I mentioned about the mirror wisdom, big round mirror wisdom, that your mind is reflected on the mirror, or some image like that. When I read that first time, this is a Zen saying related to Buddhism, I couldn't figure out. But over time, as I meditate, and especially when your mind is calm and quiet, you have this sense of the mirror, quietness, as if any movement in your mind may be reflected on that basis of a calm and quiet mind. So calm and quiet mind as a basis, and the waves ripples and wave kind of thing is the thought. So that's the notion of self-observation. Say it more not like a Zen or Buddhist way, but the typical way of self-observation may be something like this, that you put yourself outside of you, like you become a third person looking at yourself, maybe from the side or maybe from the bottom or from the top. Or in your thinking, you think of someone else looking at your thought as you talking to yourself, whatever the case may be. So that will give an additional dimension. And the other way to talk about, also related more to Zen, is that In Zen and Buddhism, we talk about the mind and body is one. When mind is mind is functioning, body is also functioning, but if we are caught up in the mind, we don't know how the body is responding, like a breathing or inner body sensation, or if your stomach is hurting. If you're working too hard and pushing, your body may be suffering, and that's not the healthy situation. So that's when you don't have a mirror, in this case, mind reflected on the body reaction, kind of like a biofeedback. But if you train yourself to have your mind calm and quiet, you have more time to reflect on it. And you're not rushing as much. Yes, calm and quiet mind cannot be established if your mind is busy. Sometimes you may get to the flow and be able to do it, but typically we need training to establish the calm and quiet basis, like a rooted state of who we are. And with that rootedness, you can see the mind more clearly, as if that is someone's mind, someone else's mind. So it's the same notion conceptually. Physically, experientially, if you can understand and practice, it's another question. But at least talking with words is only with the concept. I'm trying to share that self-observation can be like a reflecting your thinking from outside third person's point of view to evaluate objectively, as if it is hearing the first time. The same is true for this mirror mind, which is to reflect your thinking relating to your body's reaction. It may be a little bit advanced stage to have this mirror-like mind, but the whole idea is that so that our mind don't get caught up in something, or our ego is pushing or pulling in some direction because of the short-term impetus, the excitement, and I better do this. It happens to me when I play a Go game, and if there's an obvious mistake or interesting opportunity, I may jump into it without thinking all the traps that he may have set in there. So the life is the same as in such game as Go or any other games, maybe the cycling or the riding the surfboard. Many examples are similar, or sailing, or traveling on the car. So we need to have this reflective sense. Perhaps you can apply in your relationship with others, so you can see what you're doing from this other person's point of view. By knowing this other person well and how tidy or chaotic or interested in this way or that way, and how you are doing and what is her or his response to your doing, there are some characterizations you can develop so that you're not just looking one direction. I mentioned about the Japan and the US and looking only one dimension without looking at the shady part of it may not capture the essence of it. So maybe it's easy to talk about this idea in concept. In reality, it takes some effort, endurance, preparation, and have your calm and quiet mind develop more readily. And if you know you're losing, again, if the mirror is clear, you may know that you're losing this calm and quiet mind, becoming more emotional or something like that. So I think I was posting one of the video about the, I forgot his name, Alex Holland, or I forgot his last name. He's the one who did the solo climb of the El Capitan. Or before that, he went to the Half Dome in Yosemite. And one point, he has to deal with the fear because he get to the point not knowing which way to go or go back, and he is having life on the stake. If you fall, certain death. So you have to have your mind calm and quiet to know all the potentials. And if you're tired, of course, it's not easy. So he may have had lots of exercise before he get to the point. But luckily, he figured out to come back down or go up to the top of the Half Dome without trouble. And he learned the lesson. So after that, he spent 3, 4, 5 years before he actually decided to climb up the El Capitan, which is much more difficult. A little long story, but the reflection from different angle, monitoring your emotion, but relating to your breathing and bodily internal sensation, the mirror mind is a way to see yourself more objectively, and triangulating different viewpoint of objective view of yourself and talking with others and asking your question and answering question. There are various ways to figure out where you are in your life, where you are in your relationship, or where you are in your work, and what is the right direction. My suggestion, I often did with the organization, is have the rhythm of plan, do, check, act, PDCA process going. Every mini companies, I call it, department or division at the top level, and they each have the PDCA cycle, and clarity of the information is posted. I call it glass wall management, so that people can relate to each other. I mentioned about the mini company, but also I mentioned the mini me, because if your organization is like that, you yourself as individual is organization, within yourself is mini me. One mini me may be more related to relationship or finance or health or work related or spiritual dimension. So there are various component or framework or platform you may have within yourself, and consolidating all of that is who you are. And when you make move in your life, which way to go, what to do, it's all complex, convoluted process of clarification of which mini-me is stronger, weaker, what's the priority, and how would it affect in terms of other mini-me's, their vision and mission, whether they're going to achieve it or not. So if I talk like that, it sounds too crazy, but in fact, that's how we are living. If our mind is clear, we can see how we're living, responding to the stimuli much more clearly. And through that, we can be the master of ourselves. That's the idea. If we cannot be the master of our life, maybe we can be a master of one small segment of mini-me, playing the ego game, or playing the soccer, or whatever. But ideally, because life is such a thing that it's not just one component, but you may help yourself by knowing one area, but then apply the similar concept so that you have as a whole being, well established and living your life. So reflection, I've been going through my life's reflection from different angle. This is kind of like a extension of that as I move forward. And I just wanted to summarize all of that for my own sake. But also if there's anyone listening, hopefully it makes sense so that we can avoid when the mind is caught up or upset, whatever. We have a way to notice and address it. Thank you.